Welcome, everybody. I'm Kathleen Elwood. I'm an Area Senior Director for the Franklin and Lincoln clusters for K-5 and K-8 schools, and I'll be facilitating this evening. And I have Karen Werstein here. Where's Karen? Is she here yet? There she is. Karen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Karen Werstein. I'm the Public Information Officer for PPS, and I am your note taker, which means, Kathleen, I'll just do whatever you ask of me. So you just tell me what to do to help support you all.
All right. Yeah. And I think we're going to start with the Jamboard in just a moment, but I just want to start by thanking everybody for being here, both PPS staff, parents, community members. This is a big undertaking, and especially if you were here in the last session, I appreciate you coming back and working with us. I was principal previously at Irvington when it was a K-8 school, and it was starting the transition to K-5. And then I was also the principal of Roseway Heights Middle School when it opened. So I was a planning principal for 1 year and then actually opened the school for 1 year. So I've been through this whole school transition process in a couple of different ways. And the work that we're doing here is super important. But before we actually get started in the charter, if we could do quick introductions, if you don't mind just saying your name and your role, and then passing the baton to somebody else in the group, that'd be fabulous. And the first person I see is Chris. You want to start us off?
Sure, I'm Chris Gustafson. I'm a parent, a community member, representative for Lane Middle School. Pass to Kathleen.
Okay, since I just went, I will go ahead and pass to Caitlin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin Clens, and I'm the principal at Hasford Middle School.
Gonna pass to somebody, Caitlin?
Oh, sorry about that. I'm gonna throw it to Tanya.
I'm Tanya Arnold. I'm the principal at Mount Tabor Middle School, and I'm gonna pass it to Andy.
I'm Andy Jacob. I'm a parent of 2 second graders at Bridger, and I will pass it to Christy.
Well, we can't hear you, Christy. It doesn't seem like you're muted, but for some reason we can't hear you. Maybe it's the head.
We can also come back to you.
Yeah.
Here, I'll try again. I'll pass it to Carmen.
Hello, everybody. My name is Carmen Flores, and I'm a parent of 3 students in PPS, all currently at Lent School, but soon transferring to, starting high school, and then also the new middle school. And I will pass it on to, let's see, Karen? No, she's taking notes. Lori.
Hi, I'm Lori Clark, and I'm the principal at Glencoe Elementary. And I will pass it on to Maria.
Good evening, everybody. Maria Velez, Program Director for Sun Community Schools at Latino Network. And I will pass it on to Regina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Regina Sun. I'm the assistant principal at Beverly Cleary K-8, and I will pass it on to Elizabeth.
Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Kennedy Wong, and I'm a parent of a 7th grader at Mount Tabor and a freshman at Franklin. And I will pass it to Paulina.
Hello, everybody. My name is Paulina Larenas. I'm a special education family engagement specialist. Thank you. I will pass it to Crystal.
Hi, everybody. My name is Crystal Gassard. I am the interim principal at Lent K-8, and I will pass it over to Misha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Misha Plotsky. I'm the Director of Middle School Innovation and Redesign. Nice to see you all tonight. I'll pass it to Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Michelle DePass, Director DePass, representing Zone 2. I'm really glad to be here tonight, and I'll pass it to, oh, I'm sorry, there's another Michelle. Maybe the other Michelle.
That sounds great. No, I don't know if I can follow, but yes, thank you, Michelle. My name is Michelle. I'm Harrison Park kindergarten teacher and representing Health PAT. And I have no idea who's left. So you guys are gonna have
Judy,
to
right? And this becomes hard, right?
Exactly. It's like a very big, difficult puzzle. Anybody haven't said hello?
Everyone, I'm Judy Brennan, and some of us central staff were late add-ins, so thanks for letting me be included. Hi. David Roy.
David Roy, also PPS staff, and thanks to everyone for being here this evening.
I'm Catherine Pleasis. I'm principal at Woodmere Elementary School.
We got everybody else? And I know we took up some of our time doing that, but I just think it's important for us to know who's in the room and to at least have an idea of each other's faces and names and our associations and everything else. So I appreciate everybody for going on that journey with me on this exercise. So we are going to go over to the Jamboard. And Karen, can we share? Can we share our screen in the break rooms?
Yeah, I will share the Jamboard.
Okay, and basically we will be putting down input about the charter and some of the information that was just shared. There we go. I was able to actually post it in there. So she will be showing it overall, but depending on what type of learner you are, you can either go into the Jamboard yourself and add comments, or you can say them out loud and Karen will go ahead and add them on. And the feature we'll use is the Post-it note feature, which is the fourth symbol down on the left-hand side. So is there anyone who'd like to start? Do you see any areas of improvement we could add to the charter?
Are we adding or speaking?
We can add or speak. If you speak, Karen will go ahead and record it, or you can go ahead and add it in manually by using the link that's provided there that I popped in the chat. And then does everyone have access to the charter itself to review? I know you saw components of it during the slideshow. I will pop that.
I don't know if the link could be dropped into the chat of the charter. I don't have a copy of it.
I'd be happy to.
And Judy, you attached the, or somebody did, the slide deck, but we don't have access to it actually with that.
I'll get it again.
Thank you.
And I got kicked out and had to rejoin, so I don't think I have the Jamboard link because it's only showing me the new chat items. Is it possible to get that added back in again?
Yes, we can go ahead and do that. Oh, Andy already beat me to it. Thank you, Andy. So you'll see that there's a link to the actual charter itself. So we're just discussing areas of improvement. Oh, that's not the first page. My apologies. Karen, there are actually 3 pages for us to fill out in the Jamboard. If you go up to the arrows at the top and go to the one on the right, yeah, there we go. So let's talk about strengths first. Let's be strengths-based. What are strengths of the current charter? Strengths of the current charter.
I'm trying to get into the charter and it's saying I need access to get in there.
All right, let me see if I can fix that. I don't know if I have the authority, but I will see what I can do.
I can work on that, Catherine.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Judy.
Mhm.
All right, I see a Post-it. Yay, it's the start. And these Post-its will pile on top of each other unless you manually move it after you pop it up. So strengths of the charter.
There's a link. This is the sharing one. So under that, you should be able to read it. And I wonder, like, do people just have any, what do you think about having a charter? Is there just anything that pops up that could get the ball rolling in terms of what you think when you look at this and the work ahead?
I like the specificity of naming multiple schools that are going to be involved. I'm going to call that a positive, even though I've got a negative that I would love to just make it really clear that more than just those named schools are going to be involved. But I like that this time you guys came with several schools and saying straight off the bat that, hey, creative science, you guys might be moving, which may not happen, but just an alert, because it kind of, just so that people are aware, so then we can kind of trigger those pathways that lead to like natural activism and involvement.
Yeah, I mean, to your question, Judy, I like the idea of having a charter very much, to like one place that sort of lays out basic operating principles. Some of these issues I think we kept coming back to again and again in phase one, but even if we have to sort of refine them over time, something like that, I think it's a good idea.
All right, and if talking about the strengths has already taken you to the next thing, things that could actually be improved, that's actually on the second page of the Jamboard. Thanks to everyone who added strengths. And please feel free to go in and add strengths at any time. I just realized we have 7 minutes left. So not enough time to really do introductions and all of this work. So are there ways we could improve the charter? And it looks like we'll need a spokesperson for our group also, if there's somebody who'd be willing to do that once we roll back to that.
So I would just say I like the very explicit focus on equity in the charter. And at some point, I would like to see what that looks like if we're successful. So what are the measurable outcomes by which we're holding ourselves accountable? And I don't think they belong in the charter necessarily, but I think if our guiding star is equity, I want to know when we're successful, and I want to be able to hold ourselves accountable to it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Again, we can either voice things out loud or jump in and pop them up ourselves. As I mentioned, we will need a spokesperson to kind of present what we've discussed.
I have a curiosity, so maybe it belongs in the improvement category. I'm curious how this charter might change in light of like recent CDC guidelines, given our outreach goals and things like that, that we may be able to do things that we haven't considered that we were able to do previously. Because I know you guys have been working on this for a while.
I also just have another question, which is I am so appreciative of so many PPS staff and faculty and vice principals and principals. I've worked with actually 2 of you are past or present principals, and I know how hard you work. And I want to just make sure we're really explicit about what roles people are playing. So, I know that the charter calls out decision making, and if you guys are here as resources to us to help us through this, thank you so much. And it would be really good to know what those roles are.
I agree with that, Elizabeth, and I added a similar comment in the board, and I was thinking even higher level. It might be helpful to have somewhere in the operating guidelines. We don't have space to get super specific, but spelling out some of these areas where staff will commit to providing guidance on certain issues, or even places where like staff is going to make the decision on certain issues versus the coalition. Sort of what we talked about this a little bit in the chat with the Director Bailey, but I think addressing that somehow in that section on operating guidelines, I think could help.
Thank you. You guys have brought up some great points. The third page in the Jamboard, and I apologize for the rush, are just suggestions. So if you have any thoughts towards suggestions, feel free to go to the third page and add them there as we're typing up these things. And then do we have anyone who would volunteer to present what we've discussed? This is where everybody pretends they're looking at something else. This is what happens in the classroom too, when I was a teacher.
Yeah, can I, I'm not volunteering or volunteering anyone.
I don't know, Judy.
Can I just say that I really appreciated hearing voices that I haven't heard for a while. So for example, Sandra, like I wasn't even sure you were in the room because I can't see everybody, but I heard your voice and I was like, that's a voice coming, and bridging it with Elizabeth, who is new to this, but like, so appreciate you going right to equity. And I just would think that if the two of you even modeled how, phase 1 and phase 2 are coming together in that shared way. See, I'm just suggesting. Maybe.
I'm a little speechless, so there you go. If you know me, that's unique. Lori's laughing. Thank you. I have 20 million screens open, so I'm not sure what I would say. So I would defer to Sandra.
And normally I would be completely fine with that, but I am on a cell phone. And so I can't even see the Jamboard the way that I would like to be able to see it in order to give some cohesive thoughts for the group. Andy, I'm looking at you.
People have heard too much from me, but
I'll do it next time, I promise.
I have a quick suggestion, and it would be, can we, in this small group that we're in, elevate a diverse voice?
Yes.
In terms of, like building leadership and confidence and supporting this person and putting the voice out into the room.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Are you volunteering?
Well, I'm a board member, so when I think about positionality, I think it may be not appropriate for me. I am a diverse person, but perhaps there's someone else that's in the room that would be, valuable to hear from, that would improve our process. I'm looking at Carmen. I'm looking at the other people I heard that were introduced earlier, whose voices are important in the process. And I support you.
I would do it next time. This is my first time coming to a meeting, and I'm on my cell phone as well. I could see the screen, but I'm a little bit lost because this is the first time that I've come. So I don't feel like I would represent very well. But I promise you next time I will.
Okay.
I promise you.
I'm going to be watching you.
Okay, yes, you do that. Hold me accountable.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. So we are going to be discussing the lens that Danny just shared, and I'm trying to get a copy of a link to it. The one I have currently can only be viewed by PPS staff or contractors, so I've alerted them of that situation. And Karen is going to take notes. but I'd like to honor what Director DePass mentioned as we were running out of time at the end of the last session, and honor and hear the voices of those who have not yet spoken, if they feel comfortable doing so in this space. Starting with the questions around the lens itself. And the first question is, how do you anticipate applying these questions throughout the SCGC process? And I can actually, let me post them into the chat, because they may not necessarily go in chronological order as part of our discussion. So if there's someone who has not shared yet this evening in our small group who would like to share just an initial reaction to the lens, if this is your first time seeing it, then that space is open for you.
Is it possible to share while we're waiting for the link, just to like share it on the screen or something while we're talking?
Yes, let me go ahead and do that. It's another one of those documents that's multiple pages.
And are we talking
permissions are updated. So
questions or the specific ones at the end?
the ones I posted in the chat are the ones we are supposed to share, and it looks like permissions have been updated on the actual document. So I am going to go ahead and pop the document into, it's just difficult to share because it's multiple pages and different people might want to look at different parts of it at the same time. So that should allow everybody to access the document at this time. Is there anyone who's tried it yet? Yeah, there we go.
Sorry, Kathleen, I was just asking for the when it says like in the questions we're answering, when it refers to these questions, are we talking about the sort of six high level ones or the more specific data ones?
Oh, and the second question, what questions do you anticipate posing challenges? Oh, I see. Yes.
Like applying these questions. Sorry, maybe I'm overthinking it. I just want to make sure we were looking at the same stuff.
No, I believe she's talking about the racial equity lens specifically that she started to review. But what page is that on? That's a great question because this is a lengthy document. So if anyone is there already, please feel free to share out the actual page number of this document.
I think it's on page 4.
Yeah.
Thank you. So everybody just want a moment to review the document first, or that portion of the document, the questions.
Excuse me, how much more time do we have left in this breakout room? Just wanting to make sure that we cover some of these.
Yes. Yes, we have until 8:45. And now that folks have had a chance to review the questions again, let's go ahead back to our prompts. And the first one is, how do you anticipate applying these questions throughout the SEGC process? And again, as mentioned before, if there's anyone who has not yet had a chance to speak in our previous breakout session, please feel free to do so now.
So with this lens, I find this is Crystal Gassert, I'm the interim principal at Lent. I find when we use this tool in our school that we use it when setting up our process, but we go back to it several times. So I'm hoping throughout this process that we'll go back and continue to ask ourselves if we're really being intentional to make sure the stakeholders are at the table and that we're centering our main focus at each step of the way. So I kind of find this to be a good starting tool and reflection.
I think with number 4, how does the proposed actions disrupt barriers to equitable outcomes? I think that's a question we can keep in, or I can keep in the forefront of my mind as we're making decisions, thinking about students, boundaries, enrollment. And as Crystal just mentioned, like continuously going back to kind of check our thinking and get perspectives of not just what I think the barriers are, but trying to get perspective from others.
Thank you. I'm curious from some of our parent and community members who aren't necessarily as familiar with this tool, if you feel as though this tool would actually help guide us towards making more equitable choices as we do this process.
I have a question. Hi, Maria Velez, Latino Network. I think I have a wondering about question 5. I think these are really good questions to think about as we continue this process. But with question 5, and I particularly think about our parents, particularly thinking about what Danny is saying as far as the myriad of experiences that we all have. This is what, we want the diversity, right? So when I see number 5 particularly, I like the fact that it says information, but also data. I wonder if I was a community member or a parent, how is that going to make me feel? Do I have the data? Like, what does that really mean for me? What is, could this, I mean, we do want information to make, good decisions and informed decisions. But I do have a wondering about that. Access to data, just thinking about it in a way that maybe is broader. Can we bring in our lived experience? Something I think about.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm thinking that in the same line, if we have data available, our families, or is everyone going to be able to understand what it is or have a picture of, oh, this is data, but what it is, right? How it's going to impact my kids or how it's going to impact the students and families. And it's the data in a different language too. So it's accessible.
I'm going to jump in, and just this evening I was in a Kindergarten Connect meeting with my families. I'm Leah Dickey, I'm the principal at Harrison Park, and came in late for that reason, and had a Cantonese speaking parent who was asking about our DLI program come to the meeting with many, many questions in regards to the boundary changes and how that would impact kindergarten. And one of the things that came up through the course of the meeting as we're talking about the middle school and the elementary schools, and we had interpretation, was, you know, culturally, the concept of middle school is very different in China. And so there was some miscommunication right there that we weren't aware of until we clarified. And for a lot of our families, especially my families, and I can speak to my community, it is not just about presenting data. It is about having the ability to have conversations in those languages that the families, their native languages, where they feel comfortable asking questions. And we have made it a point when we do any kind of work with our communities that we do it in affinity groups. And it is a lot of work, but it's largely to ensure that people feel comfortable and are able to ask those questions and clarifying things that they need to know. And we can present data, but I also think we have to bear in mind that just giving people data and information, we also have to do some education around that. And we need to be mindful that with data, we can skew that any way we want to, and we have to make sure all sides are being thought of when we present that data.
And I'm just going to follow with Leah because she's my principal. And so she's done an absolutely fabulous job with Harrison Park. But as a teacher, I'm coming in with the fact that even with the data from my perspective, and I teach the kiddos, the kinders, is that you can't just tell them once. And so even though they're just littles, we have the wonderful, fabulous families who speak several different languages, and you have data that you have to give them, but if you can't give them that information just once. And so Leah's been very good about sort of laying the foundation, and then we just have to go back over it. And I think even for us, it's one of those things where we have to be open enough to be able to ask the questions whether or not you understand it, but we also have to be willing enough to revisit the data and the information that we give, because people are going to get it at different times.
I think building on the point that Maria and others have made about sort of the kind of merging the data and the lived experience. So I'm a Bridger parent as part of phase one, and I would say, like, if someone asked a question, sort of, how did parents feel about, what are parents going to do with the data? And so, like, during phase one, I think we had we almost had too much data at times in phase one, right? And I think what was missing and what led to ultimately some really robust conversations, but I think where we needed clarity earlier was, okay, so if we have this data, for example, on enrollment or capacity, like, what does it actually mean for students to be in a school that is below a certain threshold of enrollment? Like, how does that affect their day in school? Like, do they have access to the same electives? I think this actually connects to the question 3, essentially, like how we define expanded opportunities, right, for students, and especially for Black and Native students. Like, when we talk about enrollment, or we talk about any of these other pieces of data we're going to look at, how can we have a better understanding of what that actually translates to in terms of a student's day in school, or a teacher's experience teaching those kids? You know what I mean? Like, that was the missing piece. And I think if we can agree early on how we're going to kind of get that connection, I think that'll help a lot.
So I want to make a comment, but I also want to just put out there, thank you, Michelle, for reminding us of this. If there's anyone who hasn't had a chance to talk and wants to make comments on this, to just encourage them to do so first.
I will comment then. Something that also kind of stood out to me, the different identities that communities have. And I'm not sure I see that reflected in there. Like, in my case, I am Latina, I have kids with disabilities. So it's really hard for me to think or advocate or say, well, I want race equity without having disability equity. And that may happen with other communities too, right? With other identities. So when I advocate for disability in any state or any meetings, I'm always advocating for race too, because those two things for me are really, really key. And I need to make sure they're both acknowledged and taken in consideration too.
I think we heard some, I can't remember if it was Danny or Shanice talk about, I think it was Danny, this kind of either or thinking and how do we combat that? And what you're talking about, Paulina, is this idea of intersectionality. The idea of starting with race is that expectation that if you can solve for race, that the benefits trickle up to those other intersecting identities, you know, whether they be LGBTQIA, people with disabilities, people with multiple identities. So I appreciate you bringing that into the room.
So I do want to add one comment that as I look at these questions, I, as a white person with my experience, can't answer them, right? I don't know if an action will expand opportunities or how it will affect Black and Native students. So there is a piece of data that can be brought into the room, but also, and I really appreciated seeing the really robust engagement plan that Shanice put together. I'm really hoping that that is the source of information upon which I can draw what will be best to address equity, right? And that was when I talked earlier about really wanting like metrics, how do we know we got there? And I think that for me, if people who, you know, if Black and Native community groups are saying this is what we need to succeed and we can see how this improves us, that's what I want to be able to advocate for. So it's data and it's the community seeing its own success in the proposals that we're looking for. And that's what I want to be able to support.
And I think, you know, the timing of this, the conversation we're having right now is like very low stakes. You know, there's nothing really at stake tonight, but really like getting this dialed in now is going to be so important, because at those times when community is saying this is what we need, and there's going to be all kinds of resistance, it's going to be those times, those difficult times when we go back to like the foundational conversation that we're having tonight about how we're going to actually show up. It's not when times are great, you know, the birds are singing, the sky's blue. It's actually like when you're talking about race, how do you as a white person, you know, how do you as a Native American person or Indigenous, how do you act then? What do you draw on? Where's your North Star then at the time that you're being challenged? So I think that's really, this is an important conversation for that reason. Like tonight's an easy conversation, but 6 months down the line, when we're talking about Black and brown kids and where your own kids are going to be going to school, that's where the rubber is going to meet the road.
And I feel like having been part of this group through phase 1, looking at questions 3 and 4 were the areas where I think when we talk about areas that are going to be uncomfortable and bring up discomfort for us, I feel like those are the 2 questions where I really saw that, and trying to understand like where are the opportunities and how are we disrupting those barriers to equitable outcomes. There's a lot of different perspectives about what is best. And even when you're talking to members of specific communities, all of us have perspectives about what that means. Like, is it consolidating services in one location so that we have responsive services in that location? Is it about diversifying what's happening across Southeast? Is it being aware of gentrification and what our decisions do to support or disrupt that? There's a lot of conversation that's part of that, and trying to figure out how we listen, like openly listen to those dialogues, and then continue to work and ask those hard questions together without it shutting down the conversation. And because I felt like that was where things got really uncomfortable last time, and where I'm hoping that as a group we can continue to lean into those conversations to really surface it this time around.
I think I see Maria's hand up. Are you? Yeah, go for it.
Thank you, Judy. I'm going to make sure, because I know there are other people in this group. And so when you're talking about phase one, I'm new. So when you're talking about phase one, I'm Michelle and Tanya, if I feel like I hear kind of what you're saying, and as far as like, yes, building up to these particular questions. In phase one, was there then any discussion that you can think of or lean on about then? I think about questions of discomfort. Yes, I can see 3 and 4, but you're talking about race, you're talking about empowerment. Where was the power? Who were the people that you felt were empowered to say these things? Who were the people who maybe didn't feel like they were empowered to say something? What were some of those dynamics? Or maybe just, this is again a wondering, and I apologize if I'm not too articulate, but because I think that might be the underlying tone that maybe we as phase 2 kind of also need to think about in these spaces.
I know I can only speak for myself, so that's the only person I'm going to speak for. When I was looking at the process last time, I think it was incredibly difficult sometimes where you would have one member of the coalition that is identifying as being part of a specific group, a specific program, a specific school, that is speaking their truth and what they see as being what is equitable and where the barriers are. And then in those moments where they're speaking their truth, feeling shut down, in being able to be like legitimately heard and ideas validated and wrestled through. And I think when you have that lack of representation and a lack of ability to take that, which I was really thankful to see student groups and more community outreach in the charter this time, without the ability to take those ideas back to the full groups that those individuals actually are like part of and get a more collective feel and be able to surface the group's feelings, I think we run the risk of alienating those individuals that represent those groups in this forum when we don't actually listen in a way that shows that what they have to share is valuable and important, and when we downplay it, it's difficult, exceptionally difficult and painful. I think that was one of the things I saw was a lot of pain in the last time around.
Right, like in phase 1, there were a lot of conversations about, I guess ultimately it didn't factor into the final proposal, but about the like location of Mandarin DLI programs. And there was pretty much just one person on the coalition who was part of the, Mandarin community, but like that was put in a position of essentially speaking on behalf of an entire community. And that's just a terrible position to put someone in. And then on top of that, I think she strongly disagreed with the direction of where some pieces of the recommendation landed. And it was difficult.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult when you don't have enough people at the table with the same experience, well, not the same experiences, but similar experiences. So when you have to advocate for something that nobody else really understands or gets it, it's really, really challenging. So I'm thinking, well, you're saying it was only one person. So why it was only one person, right? Why we didn't have more? I'm new to this group too, so I wasn't in phase 1. But as you're talking, I'm like, so why we put people in those positions? Why do they have to come and advocate by themselves and then feel like I'm being left out because nobody else understands my experience, so my situation? So I think we need to make more work on that, I guess.
We have about 3 minutes. So I just want to make sure anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak has that time if they desire. And were you speaking, Regina?
Sure. No,
My
but it's fine.
apologies.
Thanks, Kathleen, for letting us know how much time we have. I was going to say, I can't answer that specific question that Paulina posed directly, but I think a good way of looking forward in this phase, when we, especially when we look at questions 3 and 4, is to be mindful of the fact that no, obviously one racial group is a monolith, right? We want to seek out that diversity of perspectives even within a racial group, and we can only get that if we obviously hear from more voices. And I think another thing that we heard too was hearing voices from students, right? Getting more direct student input. And then another piece I think of that is going to be uncomfortable, and I think that we should anticipate, is that there's going to be conflicting priorities, let's say, between different racial groups. And I don't think that there's any clear way of prioritizing or saying like who, like, you know, whose agenda we might have to maybe, I don't want to say support, but like how the proposal might lean and address the concerns of one group over another. But I think that that's likely to happen, where inevitably not everyone feels like their priorities are valued in the same way that they would like to see them valued. But it will take some, you know, some leaning in to ensure that everyone at least feels heard, that they have space at the table, right? And that there can be, I mean, hopefully some amount of compromise that doesn't feel defeating, right? That feels that, so that folks can come away with saying like, I was heard, and that, you know, at least they can see that their input has had an impact on the proposal that, you know, we collectively then recommend.
Thank you. Is there anybody who'd like to present, if they want us to present that last 15 minutes?
I actually think that there won't be a report out, so people don't have to feel like they have to summarize all of that. It was great dialogue, and it's a good way to get grounded. So thanks for letting me listen in.
I did capture all of it, just so you know, but I didn't want to type on the screen while you were talking because I feel like that's really distracting, but I think we'll be able to share it. So it's I have it all.
And as a reminder, these sessions are recorded.
I also appreciate just being welcome in the group.
It's been a pleasure spending time with everyone. Thank you so much.